Welcome everyone to another edition of Deconversion Stories. I would just want to send everyone out there some love for being Remembrance Day here in Canada, Veterans Day in the U.S., of course, Armistice Day in other places as well. So today is one where we remember all the people that sacrificed their lives so that our lives could be better. And my guest today is also a veteran. His name is Kenneth Leonard. He does have a YouTube channel as well where he talks about all kinds of things. And the link to that is below, along with a few other ones where you can follow him on Twitter, Facebook, etc., that kind of thing. And Kenneth, what I do here is I talk to people about their journeys away from whatever belief systems they were once a part of. And today we're going to twist it up a little bit towards the end where we're going to talk about, Veterans Day, Remembrance Day, what that means to us, and your time in the service. And by the way, I will say this right now. Thank you very much for your service.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I always tell people when they say that, I was like, well, I got paid the whole time I was in, I cashed the checks and everything, but I appreciate it.
Thank the Romans for that. I believe they were the first people to start paying their military. So. But why don't you kind of take us back to the days where you were once a believer and tell us about those dominoes that started affecting you and making you realize that it was just a bunch of nonsense and how you found your way out of that.
Yeah, it was. This morning I was thinking about it. I was like, I wish I had a more exciting religion to have been a part of, but I was just, Christianity was what I was raised in. So I don't know how much background is necessary, but I grew up in a pretty conservative Christian home. The church that I grew up in was started by a bunch of guys who were faculty at a Christian college in Southern California. And the church had a very sort of academic vibe going on. We were super into studying, kind of lighter on the song and dance numbers that can accompany that at some churches nowadays. But so all growing up, I was really, really into what I thought of as deeply studying the Bible, and considered myself to be a conservative, evangelical. I was even homeschooled for most of my childhood.
Wow. How'd that go? What's that like? Because I've never was. So, I was always pushed into public schools.
So the deal was that there was the way that I look at it as an adult now is that there was sort of a hierarchy of the holy in the church, and the super duper Jesus-y people were the ones who were like, we would never allow our children to be tainted by public schools. So as a way of sort of gaining status and climbing that ladder to the top of the devout, you could homeschool your kids. So from that seemed to be the strategy that my parents were having. It was like, that's what the cool people are doing. We're going to do it too. So, the Christian homeschooling community in Southern California at that time, was pretty hardcore. You had these lobbying organizations like the Homeschool Legal Defense Association that were powerful at the state level, really pushing for parents to have no kind of accountability in terms of what they're teaching their kids. So it was just straight up, religious indoctrination, frankly. I tell people my first science classes that I went to were at the Institute for Creation Research, which was sort of a predecessor to Answers in Genesis and the organizations that are spreading that kind of stuff nowadays. We had Kent Hovind VHS tapes. That was super, instructive on science. So,
heavy quotation. Air quotes there.
Yeah. So this all led to me as a young man feeling like a good thing to do with my life after, voting for George W. Bush. The first time I could vote in a presidential election was to enlist in the military and try to become part of this, crusade against terrorism, or Islam, depending on who you were talking to. So when I went into the Army, I was a pretty hardcore Christian guy. And while I was in the Army, I had a couple bad parachuting accidents. So I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Wow.
One of those accidents was pretty bad. And so I ended up in the hospital with a traumatic brain injury. And coming out of that, I had a lot of time to sort of think deeply about what I wanted to be doing with my life, and if continuing to jump out of airplanes was a good game plan. Mm-hmm. Around this same time, the church that I was going to in North Carolina was doing this. They had this structured plan of like reading through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation.
Right.
So I started doing that right around the time that I'm starting to ask a whole lot of questions. You may see where this is going. So, so I'm reading the Bible, and I get through the whole thing. And at the end, I'm like, I've got a lot of questions here. So I started again, and I started from the beginning and started reading through again. And by the end of the second run through, I was in trouble. There was enough that I was noticing in the way of contradictions and inconsistencies, not to mention just trying to gain a deeper understanding of God, like as a character, was sort of messing me up. So that was the like phase one of me moving towards non-belief. It was really studying the Bible as opposed to worshiping the Bible, which is what I'd done in church my whole life. Really studying it for the first time was what led me out of Christianity.
Okay. So, I hear that actually quite a lot from people, that when they actually get into it and start reading it from cover to cover, that's when they sort of realize it. Holy shit. I don't like this.
Right. Holy shit. Literally. Right. So what really spun me around doing that was, so I was a Calvinist. I believed that God was this all powerful guy and everything was predestined. And I think the first question that I remember asking myself that led to, the whole house of cards falling down was, I remember asking myself, well, wait a minute, if God knows ahead of time who is and isn't going to be saved, why keep creating people who are just going to get thrown in the, in the dustbin there, or, go to hell? Why make those guys at all? I mean, and so and then when I started asking, you start asking, pastors questions like this, and I'll be like, well, we all have free will, and God can't just show them to you because it'll mess with your free will. And it's like, well, wait a minute, does just like the devil and all the demons, did they have free will? And so I started asking more and more questions. Yeah. And I became a really annoying guy to have around on Sunday morning. So, so that was that. And then I held on to this idea of, well, there's got to be a God. Bearing in mind at this point in time, I am completely like scientifically illiterate. I actually took like a GED type of test to get my diploma in California, so that I could join the Army at all. So I'm holding on at this point in time to this idea that there's got to be something, some higher power. So I'm basically a deist at this point. Or just like a soft theist somewhere in there. And what ended up happening was I got out of the Army and I was going to college, and I picked up a book on the clearance rack at the student bookstore called Letters to a Young Contrarian by Christopher Hitchens, who I'd never heard of before.
Right.
And I'm sitting in a hallway at my school reading Letters to a Young Contrarian, and a young lady walking by goes, "Are you an atheist?" And I, what? No, of course not. What do I look like? And she's like, "Well, you're reading Christopher Hitchens." And I'm like, "So?" And she goes, "You should come to a Secular Student Alliance meeting." And she explains to me it's just a place for people who don't have religion to come and hang out. So I went, and that was where I started to meet people who would press me on, learning. I started learning about fallacies. I started to learn about what the scientific method was. I started to learn that there were better and worse ways to approach problem solving if you care about what is true. And that was it. After a couple of months in the SSA, I ended up becoming the president of that chapter of the SSA when I was there. Nice. By the time I was done. So yeah, that was that was basically, that's the Cliff's Notes version of the deconversion.
Mhm.
The thing I always tell people is that it was a painful process for me, because it felt like a friend of mine had died when
Right.
I let go of Christianity. I wanted it to be true. At the outset, when I first, did that second read through the Bible, and even with that, even with that predisposition towards confirmation bias of of really wanting it to be true, it was just so. I mean, I don't want to offend any of the Christians out there, but just absurd at face value. It just didn't hold up. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, had you enlisted in the military yet at this point?
Oh yeah. Because that was the thing. So it was 2007 that I joined, and it was 2009 that I had the really bad parachuting accident. So it was during that. So coming out of that traumatic brain injury, TBI, I spent like a year and a half in what they call cognitive rehab therapy. I mean, this totally, devastated my Army career. And it was just a crisis, man. I mean, so I'm looking to the Bible at this point in time for refuge from all the other stuff going on in my life.
Right.
So it was just one thing on top of the other at that point in time, in terms of me learning who I was, learning who I wasn't, learning more about this book that I had accepted as true for the previous 20 or so years of my life.
Right.
So it was, it felt like I was born again by the end of it. So
in essence, really, you can use that term. The Christians don't hold the market on that,
Can we start that?
Born again out of it.
Let's get the atheists. Let's reclaim born again.
I'm a born again atheist.
Yeah.
Except I don't know if you could say that, because you would have had to have been an atheist before, then become something else, then become an atheist again. Right?
We could say that we've evolved to this point, but that's just going to trigger people even more. So I don't know. I think deconversion is something we can stick with.
Yeah. Every time they say, evolution is bullshit, just go TikTok.
Right.
That's all you got to do.
Man, it was funny, because coming out of the Army and then going to college is already, it's like that Adam Sandler movie Billy Madison, where the adult goes back to elementary school, where you're a little bit older than everybody, and you just feel out of place. But then to be, at that point in time, I'm 26 years old, sitting in biology 101. Are you guys hearing this shit? Oh my God. Everyone's settle down. We know, we all went to high school. Where have you been? It's so I had to kind of pace myself, because I became so hungry to learn stuff, and make up for what felt like lost time.
Yeah, you realize that's at that point that so much was kept from you, not necessarily intentionally, but maybe a little bit, right? Because it goes against the belief system.
Yeah, I would say intentionally, but not maliciously.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my parents were doing, the best they could with what they had. They sincerely believed their stuff, for bad reasons, frankly. But given where they were at, it would have been weirder if they hadn't done what they did. Considering what they thought of, the condition of my immortal soul and whatnot. They're trying to protect me. So, yeah. So there was this. It's an interesting thing too there, because I went through that pissed off atheist guy phase for 2-3 years of I took it really personally, of being they lied to me, and it was ugly for a minute there. So I understand I'm not saying I have anything against the angry atheist guys out there who or the anti-theist type of guys that are out there, and gals. It was hard for me to sustain, but yeah, for that beginning period there, at the SSA, it was, we'd have these street evangelists come on campus, and they'd want to talk about the Bible, and I'd be like, oh, I would love to talk about the Bible, and it would become very confrontational. It's like the opposite of like an Anthony Magnabosco video, and it was all stuff that I had to sort of process. That's a really fun thing to me about engaging with people in this community, is it seems like everybody has had this opportunity to sort of like self-determine, they've had time to figure out who they are.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's funny because growing up, I grew up, my story is a little unique, I think. It's probably not, I'm not the only one that's been through this, or something similar, but I was born to Christians, yet given up for adoption and raised by Jews. So,
right.
But even the whole time, I remember always having questions like this stuff can't be. We went through the Old Testament and whatnot, and you hear all the stories, David and Goliath, the global flood, all these kinds of stories, the Exodus, and they all sounded like mythology to me. And I kept asking my teachers if this was just stories or if this really happened, and they didn't really know what to do with me. So I spent a lot of time in the hallway at Hebrew school for asking all these questions. And finally, eventually, I just said, "Yeah, I don't know about this crap." Even though you try talking to God and nothing ever happens, etc. So I just eventually put it all on the shelf and said, "Screw that." And I never really went through an angry phase because I never really felt like I was being lied to. I was just, people were trying to convince me that this stuff was real, and I just couldn't swallow it the whole way. A little bit, maybe in my early stages, but so I kind of went through a little bit of a fuck this kind of shit, right? But after that, it was like, it's okay. I'm an atheist, and hopefully I can convince others to join the parade, sort of thing.
Right. Well, yeah, I wonder now in retrospect how much of my anger was misplaced, and I was just sort of like embarrassed at how long I'd believed some stuff that I probably could have let go younger if I really would have thought about it sooner. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole process, right? It's of adulthood, of skepticism, of you're constantly confronting those areas where you're wrong, and hopefully just trying to do a little bit better every day. I mean, what more can we do?
That's right.
Yeah.
So what about now? What's your relationship with the family like now? Do they know that you're a non-believer now, or do you kind of keep that away or out of the family sort of thing?
Well, so I went to San Diego State. I'm at the SSA, and there's a street preacher who's gone all over campuses in the United States for years and years and years. He goes by Brother Jed, and this guy was going to be coming to our campus. We reached out to his people, said, "Listen, how would Brother Jed like to do a little debate?" So he agreed. We set it all up. I was going to debate this guy about whether or not Christianity was true. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a guy who went to the church that I grew up in, who still is a philosophy professor at San Diego Christian College, formerly Christian Heritage College. And so I was like, "Hey, listen, this debate thing's going to be happening at San Diego State. If you want to bring some of your students, maybe it'd be fun for them to check out." This guy knew who Brother Jed was. He had seen him on his own campus like 2 decades previously, and was just like, "Jed's still going?" It's like, "Yeah, Jed's still going." So I tell the guy about this thing, and I don't think twice about it. Debate day comes. I'm wearing a tan suit because I wanted to look like Christopher Hitchens. And I'm there. I'm getting ready. I'm getting my notes ready. And it's like moments to the start time. We're in this giant lecture hall. And in walks this philosophy professor with my mom, my pastor, like all of the elders from the church that I had stopped going to.
Yeah.
And they sit like in like the second row. And my mother is openly weeping before it's even begun.
Okay.
So Yeah. So I was like, shit, what do I do? And so I wrote on my little notepad, like in giant letters. It was just like, just tell the truth
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be okay. So I as the debate continued, as it began and went on with Jed, the way that we did it structurally was like the debates that a company called Intelligence Squared does. So we poll the audience beforehand. It's like, is Christianity true? We got yes, no, undecided. And then at the end of the debate, right before closing statements, we poll the audience again to see how many people have changed their minds. And that's how we were going to determine the winner of the debate.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's interesting.
It was really, I mean, a lot of debates that I see, there's no interaction at all with the audience and how the audience is doing. So it was something that I had seen this other, debate platform do. And I was frankly shocked at how many people expressed that they changed their minds over the course of the debate.
Really? Wow.
Like, yeah, I mean, it was a swing of like 40 people out of maybe 200 that changed their minds. It was really more than I thought it was going to be.
Did anyone swing the other way?
No. It was mostly undecideds changing their minds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there were a couple who went from the yes to either no or undecided. The yes column didn't gain any. The undecided shrunk considerably, and the no's expanded.
Mm-hmm.
So, technically, some people could have moved over to the no side, and I just wouldn't have been able to tell from the numbers, I guess. So,
yeah.
But I over the course of the debate, I'm watching my mom get more and more upset. She was really, really, and she was just crying.
Like heartbroken kind of thing, or?
By the end, yeah, it went from disappointed to, being really, really upset. And my pastor.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
I was going to say, safe to say, she didn't change her mind by the end of this.
No. And the pastor looked angry, and I'd never seen him look like that before. He was like red in the face. And afterwards, after the debate, I went over and, I hugged my mom and shake hands with the church elder guys. And it's like, thanks for coming out. Didn't know you were going to be here. And the pastor was like, we'll talk about this later. But we never did.
Okay.
We never did. That was actually an interesting thing to me, was because when I got out of the Army, I moved home. And this whole time that I was active in this secular student group, at this point, I'm appearing on like AM Christian talk radio to talk to apologists and stuff. And nobody from the church reached out to me. And the few limited interactions that I've had over the years with people from that community, it's just like, we don't talk about the atheism thing. And one of the people who was sort of a mentor to me as a teen is a theology professor who actually specializes in teaching apologetics at a seminary outside of Los Angeles. And we had a very brief exchange, and it seems, from what he said, it was like, listen, read the book of Romans. It says, you already know there's a God, and you're only rejecting him so you can live an unrighteous, sinful life.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
Right.
You just want to sin. Yeah.
You just want to sin. It was the you just want to sin thing. And I was like, it's weird is I don't think I'm living a particularly sinful life. I'm pretty boring. I'm really focused on like my family and my job. What if maybe it's another thing? What if maybe I just don't believe it? And it was just like, that's not possible because the Bible says you already know. So that's a conversation killer, you know?
Well,
So
actually, if you're able to manage to point out that the Bible got a lot of things wrong, so why would we take that as somehow a source for everything right? You know,
I went a little bit softer with just why should we care what the Bible says?
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, you know, you already know. I'm like, what? But maybe you could help explain it to me. And it was, there was no interest in engaging on that level. So
it's too bad.
It's it's one of those sort of unpleasant situations. My mom loves me and wants what's best for me, but this is not a subject that we can really speak on. My father passed away a few years ago. She's married to another guy now. And my mom's husband is like a street evangelist guy. And so we've tried talking a few times, and it's not really worked very well. The last time that we talked, I was out in California, and he said, I just don't understand how anybody could be an atheist. And I pulled out the classic, well, sure you do. I mean, because you're an atheist about all those other gods other than the one that you believe in, right? Like there's all these gods you don't believe in. I just believe in, that one less God than you do, right? And that just like it's just like totally scrambled his mind, and
Short circuit.
And it was like, we shouldn't talk about this. We're not going to come to agreement on this. And I was like, well, if you ever want to, I'm into it. So in my experience, I mean, what I've leaned into more and more and more over the years is telling people, I just really, really want to, believe true things, and I try not to believe false things. So if you have access to some information that's true, I sincerely want to know about it.
Right.
So to the degree that you're comfortable talking about it, I'm here for you. And nowadays I try to stay away from telling people they're wrong as much as I'm inclined to tell people I'm not with you. I don't believe you. You haven't done enough to bring me to your side, and then we can talk about the reasons why.
Unconvinced.
So, yeah.
I mean, I don't talk to people about this to try to get them to stop believing. I just want to talk to people to try and get them to think a little bit about what they believe and why they believe it.
Yeah.
That's
I
more
mean,
the angle.
I don't want to freak you out, but your neighbors to the south are struggling when it comes to critical thinking skills, like on a massive scale. So that
we try to be
it's that. I mean, that was the impetus of me sort of coming off the couch from being sort of an outspoken atheist activist guy in college to sort of going back into just private, then coming back out and starting a YouTube channel and engaging with people online. It's been.
I wanted to just make a mention. I love how when you first started doing that, but you said, I'm not a YouTuber. And I said, yes, you're a YouTuber.
Right.
You are now.
That was the fun. So I had a plan. I had this plan to do a couple of videos of being like, I'm not a YouTuber. And then to do a video that was about like, how do you evaluate a claim? If someone's saying something and you're like, this doesn't line up with reality, like somebody who has a YouTube channel and makes videos on YouTube telling you on YouTube that they're not a YouTuber, if I say, well, I choose not to view myself as a YouTuber, how would we figure out who was more in touch with reality? So that was going somewhere. But I had enough people that were like, would come to me just very sincerely and sweetly and be like, you are a YouTuber and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with being a YouTuber. And I'd be like, I'm doing a bit. Like there's a thing I'm trying to set up here. But
you're a content creator. Some of it happens to air on YouTube.
Right. It wasn't even that nuanced. It was fully just me trying to set up this silly thing. And It's been such a rewarding thing, though. I can't. I mean, just the people that I've met, the friendships that have happened over the last year have been so great. But it was really focused on the critical thinking aspect. Yeah. I look at a lot of the sort of proliferation in the United States of various religious ideas as symptomatic of deeper issues with, bad epistemology, failures of critical thinking. And so that's the area where I'm most focused, in hopes that all this religious stuff sort of sorts itself out once we get more people, valuing what's true. It's been fairly shocking to me interacting with people who will express that they care very deeply about what's true and they've got a commitment to it. And then when you start asking them about what methods we can use for determining what's true, being met with just overt hostility. So yeah. Or asking someone, do you care about what is true? That's a fairly triggering question for quite a bit of people in my experience thus far.
It is.
But you got to ask. So,
indeed. Just so you're aware, Kenneth, I've been watching the chat for a while, and I'm a little concerned because apparently people aren't getting this. It's just spinning and spinning and buffering and buffering.
Oh,
and my guess is right now it could be StreamYard, it could be YouTube, because I imagine that because of COVID and today being the day that it is, that a lot of people are communicating back and forth via either StreamYard or Zoom or whatever medium they're using, and I'm sure that this is having issues with the whole buffering because the servers aren't handling it for some reason.
Okay. Okay. Someone actually just messaged me and said YouTube is glitchy across the board. So I think you're on to, yeah.
That's okay. They'll be able to watch this all the way through once we're done anyway, so they can go back and they can check out the entire conversation that we had.
There was one other component of the military stuff that might be interesting, that makes me sort of a unique character. So prior to joining the military, I was super into martial arts. Specifically, I was really into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Cool.
And
I did
a predecessor to Jiu-Jitsu, to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So when I was coming out of having this traumatic brain injury and was coming out of rehab, I couldn't really do my job anymore in the Army, and I got reassigned. Became a full-time instructor in what's called the Modern Army Combatives Program. So for basically the last nearly year and a half of my time in the Army, all I did full-time was teach hand-to-hand combat. And I think this was where I got my first lessons when it comes to like evaluating truth claims and dealing with epistemology. Because in the world of martial arts, there's a lot of stuff that is put out there as being super duper effective, but then when you put it to the test, it's not. And I don't know to what extent this impacted my approach when I started reading the Bible again. But a huge part of my job was dealing with claims without evidence being obliterated in real time in a very we'll say dynamic way. So,
here's the reason why YouTube didn't pay their internet bill.
Oh, well, that makes sense. They probably, we all know YouTube's strapped for cash.
Almost came out of my nose, Kenneth. Almost.
Oh my gosh.
You'll have to try harder. Let me ask you, as a service member, I guess, did you ever hear the phrase "there's no atheists in foxholes."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Someone gifted me a book called "No Atheists in Foxholes."
Yes, I've seen
after I became an atheist, to be like, you're not allowed in the foxholes anymore, apparently, because that would invalidate this whole thing.
That's not what that means.
So the really horrifying instance of this in the culture of the army when I was in, there was a general who was in the special operations community. He'd been like a Delta Force guy. Man, I can't think of his name, but he had this. He came out with a book that was called Chosen Soldier, I think. I wish I could remember the guy's name. Jerry Boykin, I think, was the guy's name. He was a 3-star general.
Familiar.
And he ended up being I really hope my memory is right on this. Fact check me, people, but I'm pretty sure this guy was relieved of his command because he would go to churches in uniform and give speeches talking about how the U.S. Army was at war with Islam. And that guy was like right there in North Carolina where I was. And so there were these super conservative religious ideologues who were in positions of power. And when I would go to church just outside of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, in the way that we commonly see politics and religion intermingling in the United States right now from the pulpit, the intersection of military and Jesus was happening a lot. We're talking like 2008, 2009. And when I was really plugged into that world. So yeah, this idea that you had to be religious to be a soldier was very popular at the time. I guess nobody had heard of Pat Tillman at that point in time.
Pat Tillman, that name also rings a bell.
So Pat Tillman,
I can't place it though.
He was an NFL player who left the NFL to join the Army, became an Army Ranger, was killed, turned out by friendly fire. And he was an atheist and a very thoughtful guy. And when he died, he was propped up as this, political tool because Pat Tillman looked like he was built in a lab like Captain America to be trotted out to do, recruiting. The guy,
super soldier for him.
Yeah. And there's a great documentary about him. I think it's just called The Tillman Story, where you see at his funeral, his brother gets up with like a stein of beer and like pushes John McCain out of the way, or I don't know what politician, but some guy out of the way to be like, look, you guys are all talking about who my brother was and none of you knew him. He would be disgusted by all of this. He didn't believe in God. He didn't believe in any of the nonsense that you're trying to sell here. So we'd appreciate it if you would stop. And the rest of the family would like to just remember him, thanks, bye. And it's, yeah. So I don't know of any more prominent foxhole atheist than Pat Tillman.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that you have sort of told a little bit about who he was, it all came back to me. I remember because we had actually been speaking about this guy probably a couple of years ago during a Super Bowl, no less.
Oh yeah.
Where I was talking a little bit about atheism and then we got onto the Tillman story. So yeah, but for the life of me, I couldn't, it was there, but it wasn't like,
right. Yeah.
Couldn't trigger it. So
it's a super sad story, but,
it is.
Yeah. I've been out of the Army. I got out in 2011. So I can't speak at all on what the culture is like now, but, it was at the very tail end of my time in the service. It was something I was really noticing and concerned with. What was interesting though was I remember, at one point in time when I was at Fort Bragg, those Westboro Baptist Church guys came out to protest at Fort Bragg. And so there was like a point where even the super far right conservative guys who I knew when I was in the service would be like, okay, well, those guys over there, those guys are weird. We don't associate with those Westboro guys. There's a line we won't cross type of a thing. But that's all, I don't know. It all seems very arbitrary to me where those lines get drawn among the faithful in terms of what is and isn't acceptable, or how they interpret the holy books.
Right. Because we all know that they all interpret them somewhat differently, which is why there's like 33,000 plus different denominations.
Right. Well, and the Westboro guys get it wrong with their signs. God hates figs. Jesus cursed the fig tree.
That's right. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Figs.
Yeah,
so
he's got nothing against cigarettes.
Right. They need to reread their Bible. It's a very specific
sticks or whatever the hell.
Yeah, a very specific fruit that God had a problem with at one time. So, yeah. I've always said, well, shit, the whole thing's a damn setup anyways, because if he's all knowing, then he knew everything that was going to happen, but he went ahead with his plan. That was the thing.
Anyway,
that was the Calvinist thing. That was the crack in the armor. So yeah, but I mean, it's fun to talk about.
For sure.
I do enjoy engaging with, in my experience, the Calvinist types tend to be pretty hardcore. They tend to like to engage, and I do respect that. So
I've spoken to some.
Yeah. I in a way prefer the more aggressive, confrontational believers to the more passive ones, because I kind of like them out in the open where I can see them, So,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah.
I just my friend Randolph Richardson, who's president of Canadian
Atheist,
just sent me a text, and I'm like, "What is that all about?" And he goes, "Oh, sorry, wrong number."
Oh, yeah.
And of course, coins happened twice during that. My notification sound is the Mario coin.
Right.
So, and it's become a drinking game on my shows now. So every time you hear a coin, you have to take a drink. So.
Oh, I if I would have known, I would have come prepared. I've got water. This looks like it's something fun. It's water in here.
I've got extra beer.
What is your beer of choice?
Recently, I've been on kind of this comes from the land of Shannon Q. It's Alexander Keith's India Pale Ale. So
okay,
it's a good one.
Okay.
Right? Now, if Aaron was watching this, he would be phoning me right now and go, "What the fuck are you drinking?"
I'm having Aaron on my channel in like
it's okay,
a bit, and this is
he's great.
I was suggesting to another friend that I should get like a bunch of different like stouts or porters or something, and try to just go like beer for beer with Aaron during an interview.
Don't
Yeah, I don't know.
If you like sleeping on the floor, then go ahead.
We'll see. I thought, it's funny because when I was in the military, I thought that I had a high alcohol tolerance, but then in between my first and second years of law school, I clerked for a judge in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and I started drinking with authentic Irish folks, and they taught me that I did not have a high tolerance for anything. So it's healthy.
Dude, you're going up against Irishmen. That's
perspective.
Not even fair.
Yeah, perspective is key. But I developed a taste for the darker beers there.
Darker beers are great.
Yeah.
But the stuff Aaron drinks is when he actually gave me a ride to my flight out of Dallas, and we stopped for a quick little beer at this place that had one. He ordered for me, and it was a dark beer. It was about 11 or 12%. I can't remember, but it had jalapeno in it. Yeah, so it tasted really good, but then you get that little kick at the end.
Yeah,
so it's like, wow, that was really, really good.
I don't drink anything that's going to burn on the way out. That's the, call me stick in the mud, but.
One of the guys in the chat right now, Mark Caesar, sent me a bunch of hot sauces from Australia. One of them's called Black Label, which is the highest level one, which is according to the bottle is 16 out of 10. Which I did 2 teaspoons full on the air because he kind of challenged me to
just do so. Straight hot sauce.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which is fine. It was really tasty stuff, but yeah, it gives a burn. But I've had hotter myself. But the other one that's like a notch under, it's called Shit the Bed, which I thought was a great name for a hot sauce.
Yeah. I last a year ago, 2 years ago, gosh, time is flying. My best friend and I, we did a challenge where we were inspired by this internet interview show called Hot Ones, and we had Have you seen that where the guy, they did the interview while they eat the hot wings? So we got those sauces, and neither one of us does well with hot, spicy food. So it was like 30 minutes of my family like laughing at me. It was my fiance's family. We're at their house, and you know, they're all going, "You're marrying this guy?" So it's like 30 minutes of them laughing at me, and then like 6 hours of us just, you know, out of commission. So.
Yeah, and it is true what they say. It's just as hot coming out the other side.
Yeah, you gotta. It's a, you know, maybe once a year push those boundaries, see where you're at. But
yeah. How's my tolerance level go up, go down?
Yeah, the hottest sauce that we had was something ridiculous, like 500,000 Scoville or something. Yeah. And I mean, I know there's way hotter stuff, but for a noob like me, that was
go with straight capsaicin.
Yeah.
That stuff will make your skin fucking melt when you eat that shit. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the next day you're just like, oh Jesus fuck.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, and your family is knocking on the door. Are you okay? Yeah, just give me a minute. You know,
there's a fire hose out there somewhere.
Right. So, but
well, tell how did you? What was it that prompted you to want to join the military?
Well, okay, so
we got to talk a little bit about this because it is the day for that too, right?
I was at a jiu-jitsu school. I was doing, you know, like mixed martial arts, and there was a guy at that school who'd been an Army Ranger, and we were talking about you know, what that experience had been like for him. And at that point in time, I was you know, living in Southern California. I was managing a restaurant, and it had a pretty comfortable life. And I'm sitting in the restaurant one day after that morning I'd gone to jiu-jitsu. I'm talking to this guy about, you know, his war stories and stuff, which he didn't glamorize it at all. It was very much, you know, he gave me, but I'm watching the news and I'm seeing guys overseas. I'm seeing, you know, it was actually kind of funny because on the news they were talking about they were pulling back from Iraq, and then the plan was to do a troop surge into Afghanistan. And in my mind, I'm like, these wars are going to be over like any day now, and I'm not doing my part. I'm like, I voted for George Bush. I wanted all this stuff to be happening, but I'm sitting here, you know, in Southern California while guys like me are halfway across the world, you know, struggling. And I was like, I should go join the military so I can do my part before this all ends. Can you imagine looking back now in 2007 being like, the wars are going to be over soon. So yeah, well, 2006, it was the end of 2006 that I first started the process, and like March of 2007, I shipped out. So yeah, that was it. I at that time, again, I'm just a conservative evangelical who felt like the war in Iraq was super justified. I fully believed the narrative as it was sort of sold to the American public by the Bush administration, and really felt like I was doing the right thing by volunteering to go jump out of airplanes and kill people.
I lived in Israel for almost a few years, not quite, but 2.5, give or take. And I got to do some military training when I was there and did the paratrooper thing. We did tandem, or static line tandem, and then one free fall. So I got to experience what that was like. And holy shit, man. The first one was the tandem because they send you with someone, obviously, as you know. And I was shitting my pants. I was like, holy crap. But I wasn't scared to jump. But once you're out that door, it's like, holy fucking shit. Now you're no control. Except the guy you're strapped to, right? You're just like,
I'll tell you the dumbest part is I am definitely scared of heights, and I have been my entire life. So
it's totally different though.
Well, I was like, I'm going to go sign up for this because it'll cure me of my fear of heights. But that's not how it works. So
I felt it was different because I'm afraid of heights. It's not the heights I'm afraid, it's that hit at the bottom.
Well, yeah.
But when you're that high up, because for your first couple jumps, they don't take you up super high. They go
but high enough. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel real.
Right. That's what I mean. It's not like you're on a building. You're actually above the planet, and you're just like, whoa.
And it doesn't. I'm trying to explain to people. It doesn't feel like you're falling.
No.
You're just kind of hanging out in the sky, and you feel very disconnected from the world. And I don't know if you had this experience, but
it's feeling a rush of freedom. It's weird.
It is. And when you're in the airplane or the helicopter, as the case may be, it's very loud. And then as soon as you step off, it's
instant. Yeah. Calm. Well, except for the wind.
Quiet. But it's very, very peaceful once the parachute opens.
Oh yeah. And I was like, I got to get back up there. And then, we did right away. Obviously we did the one. And then a couple weeks later, we do a static line where we're on our own now. And then it auto triggers which you're lower for, and auto triggers your chute. And then finally, after a couple more lessons and stuff like that, we got to do a free fall. And I was just like, and it's just so awesome, that feeling.
The bad jump, the worst jump that I had, it was a static line jump. Right. Yeah, Kristen knows me super well. I absolutely adore Kristen. One of my very favorite people. And I'll go on record as saying pro Kristen. Me
too.
So the really bad jump, we were jumping from 3,500 feet, which is not very high. It's high enough to kill you. But it was, this was the dumbest thing. So I had this thing of really wanting to jump out of every different type of aircraft you could as an Army paratrooper. Sure. And someone in my command knew that this was a goal of mine and was nice enough to set me up with a jump out of a big 2-rotor helicopter called a Chinook. So
I'm very familiar.
Yeah, it's a bunch of special forces guys and like a couple of us 82nd Airborne weenies that were along for the ride with the cool kids. So I remember us getting all, suited up with our, parachutes and harnesses and everything you need. We're sitting out in this field in North Carolina waiting for the Chinook to come in. It's just beautiful. Like ideal conditions for a jump. And the bird comes in and it's what's called a Hollywood jump. So there's no equipment. It's just you and the parachute. So I remember getting on the bird, and then I remember being in the hospital, and it's like 12 hours later.
Wow.
And I don't know how I got there, where I am. My ex was in the room. My ex-wife is in the room. She's in tears. One of my coworkers, the one who drove me to the hospital, was there. I just, white as a sheet. And I'm going, what happened? So apparently what happened was I had a total parachute malfunction, which is as bad as it sounds.
Good, you can laugh about it now, Kevin.
Right. So I had to pull my reserve parachute, and basically the reserve parachute, from what I've heard, this is all hearsay, it's secondhand. The reserve parachute didn't open fully until I was very nearly at the tree line. So just a couple 100 feet above the ground. And one of the guys that I worked with who was there said that when I hit the ground, he said I bounced, and he was like, that guy's dead. So
normally you would be.
Yeah. So
you must have hit just right. Because you're up and walking around, right? So
I didn't know where I was. So I had some broken ribs, and I had a really bad concussion. So all things considered, could have been a whole lot worse. But I still am operating at, significantly reduced capacity compared to where I was beforehand. I'd like to tell people that it's proof of, you don't have to be that sharp to be an atheist. I don't like the idea that atheists think of themselves as being like smarter than everybody, because I certainly am not. I'm not faster. I'm not sharper. No. So that was the whole thing. And then at the very beginning of the rehab process, it was like sitting across the table from a therapist. There was like a speech therapist that I worked with. And then also there was a bunch of doctors who worked in the cognitive rehab facility at Womack Army Medical Center there in North Carolina. And they'd have these cards that looked like some preschooler type drawings on them. And it'd be like, here's a ducky, here's a horsey, and here's a doggy. What was on the first card? And it was just like, I don't know what was on the first card. And it was those first few months, it was the most frustrating experience in my life.
Imagine. Yeah.
And just not being able to retain information and having to sort of try to find out what neural pathways we could, reestablish and get up and firing again. So yeah, it was an interesting thing. And the reason why
getting some praise here, Kenneth.
This is a friend of mine saying a not true thing to be nice. The reason why I felt like it was such a cool thing to be able to schedule doing this on this day is that the whole thing about Veterans Day in the United States versus Memorial Day is one's for the living and one's for the dead. And traumatic brain injuries are sort of the signature injury of the last decade of war here that we've had, 2 decades of war that we've had.
War's been around since humans have been around.
Right. And the lack of aftercare, the lack of of consideration of
I'll be honest, it's appalling.
Well, the statistics out of the United States, out of the Veterans Administration, is that every day around 20 veterans commit suicide. You've got PTSD, you've got substance abuse issues, you've got all kinds of mental health issues. And one thing that Ethan Michael and I have talked about a lot on his channel is how ideas of toxic masculinity in our culture, build on top of that existing sort of ambient level of toxic masculinity, the culture of the military, and then, step out into the real world. And you've got a lot of people who don't want to ask for help when they really, really, really need it. So if you know any veterans out there, people in YouTube land, just ask them if they're okay. And when they're like, yeah, I'm fine, be like, no, really, how are you doing? Because they're going to go, no, I'm fine. At first. Yeah. So
here's an interesting question for you, Kenneth, from Mark. He wants to know if you were accosted, so to speak, by religious people while you were in the hospital. Did they ever try and come up to you, comfort you, that kind of thing?
Not really. No. The accosting of the religious stuff in the Army mostly happened in the very beginning of it. They actually have these Bibles that the covers of them are camouflaged just like your uniforms are, and they give them out in basic training to anybody who wants one. So really, the only reading material back in my day that you were allowed to have in basic training was religious stuff.
Wow.
You weren't allowed to have anything else.
Did you have any for like kindling or anything like that?
Yeah, right. No, yeah. And it was just, you'd see guys with their Bibles, I didn't see a single guy with like a Quran. I think they had Book of Mormons available to people, Books of Mormon. I don't know what the proper plural is for, the Joseph Smith stuff, but
Book of Mormon is what it is.
Right. So, but yeah, where I was at, it was all Christians, at least outwardly expressing, their faith identity or whatever in their reading material. So you'd see, after training, in this, giant room, like, if anybody's ever seen Full Metal Jacket, it looks just like that, where you got the bunk beds,
Yeah.
And that one guy in the corner that's kind of like cleaning his gun too much, like all of that, it's all there. So, and then you'd have guys in their bunks reading their little Bibles at the end of the day, because there's, it's like that, or do push-ups, or so.
I've heard from other veterans that or atheists, even during some of their time, would have said that they'd still go to church there just to get out of some other duties.
That's true.
Like
That's
right?
very true. That was definitely a thing that people would do. So yeah, on Sundays it was like you can go to church or you can clean the bathroom with a toothbrush kind of a thing. It's like, well, I guess I'll go to church. So it's like, right. Oh yeah. And it would be, you would look out and it would be a bunch of guys that were, just, like babies trying to keep their heads up, It's just like,
that's awesome.
So yeah.
Well, you might as well abuse the system, I always say, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was what it was there for a lot of people. Yeah.
Nobody wants to clean a bathroom with a toothbrush. Let's be honest.
Right. And and a sanctuary can, you can be taking sanctuary from a lot of different things, right? So it could just be getting out of having to do chores. So
absolutely.
There was also religious concerts though too. That was another thing.
Oh, okay.
So every once in a while there'd be like Christian rock bands would come through and tour. Sure. It was anytime there was a concert on bass, it was either a country western artist or a Christian rock group. So it was So again, you get out of doing stuff by going and seeing some, lukewarm,
tunes. Why not?
Christian version of yeah.
Why not? It's music, regardless of the lyrical content. Who cares? It's just music.
Yeah.
If you get your toes tapping, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm a musician. It's not that I dislike any religious music at all. It's some of it kind of like, but if it's rock related or some good old blues or something like that, I'm okay. I don't really care as long as the tune itself is good. I'm good.
There were Christian artists that I listened to who it's something that I would love to talk to Seth Andrews about. We're planning on sitting down in a few weeks too. But
awesome.
There were some legit artists out there, but in my experience, I think it was the cartoon King of the Hill, where a character is talking about Christian rock, and it's like, you're not making rock or Christianity better, you're just making rock worse. That seems
was the
to
Bobby
be
one where he was going to go and blame them or something.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so that tends to be my I don't know. Maybe I need to be nicer to the Christian rock crew out there.
Hey man, they're entitled to listen to it all they want. That's okay.
What do you play?
I'm the vocalist actually in my band.
Oh, nice.
I grew up playing trumpet. I played a little bit of drums. I could play like a few 12-bar blues on a guitar, that kind of thing. But really, my instrument is my voice. So.
And is it rock? Or
it's rock. We do heavier edge stuff. We do some middle of the road. We do some acoustic.
Do you have a favorite rock vocalist ever? I was talking to someone about this the other day. Who the great rock vocalists are?
I would say for a vocalist, I'm a huge Black Sabbath fan. They're probably my overall favorite band. Same with like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, those kind of bands, like the classic guys. I would probably say if I had to pick one of the best voices, I would say Ronnie James Dio. I'm
so happy that you said that. I love Ronnie James Dio. Yeah. That definitely would be like top 5 for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love Ozzy too. So
yeah. I mean, Dio is like a little demon though, man. I mean,
he's like all of like 4'4" or some shit.
Yeah. It's like, how's that coming out of that guy?
Fucking sound that came out of him is like, you're right. There's a little demon inside that howls every time he fucking sings or something.
Yeah. I always, if someone's never heard of Ronnie James Dio, I usually give them the last in line. Possible? Oh, totally. Yeah. Oh. I usually give them the last in line, and I'm like, this starts out a little bit slow, but it picks up in a hurry, and you're gonna feel the power that this guy's got.
That's right. Yeah. Holy Diver is another. Those are his solo albums, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules from Sabbath. You got the Rainbow albums. You can hear this guy in his prime, just fucking giving her. And I was lucky enough to have seen him twice. So
that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Well, very cool.
Yeah. But Kenneth, man, we've gone past the hour, and usually I like to keep these about an hour. I know when you're having a good time, time flies, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you joined me today, man. Especially today, being a veteran. It's been really, really cool talking with you. Once again, because of what it is today. Thank you for everything you've done as keeping us safe over here in North America.
Thank you. It sounds like you were doing similar stuff in Israel. So, we're all...
just basic training. They with the option to stay, but my parents were like, no, get back here. And so they got me home. So I did the 6-month boot camp and some training and stuff. And then I came back. But anyway, I was always interested in military type stuff. Still am. I watch old war movies and stuff like that, right? But anyway, so kudos to you, my friend, for your service. And everyone, I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation as much as we did, because I can tell we had a great time. I think we had a good time.
I wish I would have brought if I would have known. Next time I'll bring beers. Next time we hang out.
All right, absolutely, for sure. Because you're welcome into any of my after parties anytime, my friend. And you can bring.
I'll do it.
And we're going to do an after party tonight, and I've got a little bit of a surprise for you. Some folks that have been they were bugging me long before this was happening, and they're going to pop in to give you their thank yous and hellos.
Oh, geez. Okay.
You'll know quite a few of them. That's one thing I wanted to say, guys, is I've got a lot of folks that are going to be popping into this after party. If you are interested in jumping in just to say hi to Kenneth and maybe have a question or two for him, let me know through the Twitter DMs or Facebook Messenger if you're not on Twitter. I'll do what I can. I can rotate people in and out, but we'll probably go for at least another hour anyways after this. And I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation. And if you're a veteran out there, I tip my hat to you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for keeping this country what it is today, because right now we could be under the Third Reich for crying out if that's the case, right? The High Man in the Tower is a great series to watch if you're interested to know what may have been or could. But no, fuck that. They were never going to win. Forget that. We're way better than that. But anyway, with the whole COVID thing going on right now, guys, remember to be well, be safe, and above all, be kind. Wear those masks, because contrary to what you might think, they actually do keep the spread down, because you're symptomatic and not even know it. So there's all kinds of weird shit coming from that now, like constricted blood vessels that are killing off, some of your organs and shit. Like there's all kinds of weird shit going on. But anyway, let's not get all creepy there. Just stay safe. And like I always say at the end of these deconversion stories, like the late great Christopher Hitchens, the first book guy you read, like he said, remember. I was supposed to do the Carl Sagan one, which is not yet. Damn it! Why isn't my brain working all of a sudden? Oh, that's right. It's called faith because it's not knowledge.
Not knowledge. That's right.
And we'll see you guys next time. If you like the music from the new intro and outro, hit me up and I'll give you a link to the rest of it. We'll see you guys next time.